My name is Kiera Edwards, and I am the Director of Programs and Grants Management at MAA. This webinar is presented by MAA, and it's also funded by the Paul R. and Virginia P. Halmos Fund. We wish we could have offered this session in person at MathFest, but we're glad to be able to offer alternative measures and use virtual programming to offer the webinar to you all, especially those who are preparing for the fall semester. This is actually...
Should we turn on the recording?
It looks like we're recording.
Oh, okay.
Yep, we are. Thanks. Good catch though, Nat.
Thanks, Nat.
It's not showing up on my screen. That's weird. Okay.
I'm seeing it, so.
Thank you. This is actually the second webinar in our series this week, Innovative Course Design for the Fall webinar. Yesterday, we had a great kickoff webinar on online inquiry-based learning, and then tomorrow we'll wrap up our series with mastery grading and building a syllabus. All of the webinars that we presented this week will be, we'll have recordings available on MAA Connect by next week. I would check in there. And also, please log on to MAA Connect to keep the conversation going after this webinar. So with that, we have some great presenters for you all today. So thanks again for joining. And then Nathaniel and Virgil, I'll pass it off to you.
Great, thank you, Kiera. So we are Nat Miller and Virgil Pierce. We're two professors here at the University of Northern Colorado. We have a master's program in mathematics teaching that has been a fully online program for the last, I want to say 5 years now. It's a program that's aimed at high school teachers and community college instructors that are looking to get a master's. But we do teach a fair number of proof-based classes, and so what we were hoping to do in the MathFest presentation is we wanted to kind of go over how our courses work, what they look like, what's some advice that we give to new instructors, and what the experience from the point of view of our students is. We've kind of adapted our plan to this format, so we'll be here trying to show you how it works, and we'll try to put you through an experience of a little bit of what one of our classes looks like. So we have, before we go further, we have 3 people helping us today. I'm calling them facilitators because they're going to help us with our breakout room sessions. So Elizabeth Kersey and Jeff King are here. They are both instructors in our program here at Northern Colorado. And then Stacy Elder is with us. She is a teacher in the Poudre School District, and she's also a student in our MA program. So if you have questions and you want to know what this actually looks like from the student point of view, we can get you the really dirty answer if you want it. Let's see, anything else you want to add before we go on that?
No. So okay. We just have some introductory slides here. Just to let you know, the MA is recording the webinar, and they are going to make it publicly available. And so if you're participating, you're going to show up on the video potentially, and so just be warned. So just some guidelines. We want to be mindful that this is a hard time for everyone, and so we want to be respectful to everyone. For this first part of the webinar, we're going to be talking about some advice we have and different things that we've tried and or that we know other people have tried. And for right now, we're asking that everyone stay muted and leave your video off, and if you have questions, you can type them in the chat box, and we'll be trying to look at the chat box and bring forward the question as they come up. So please do ask questions, just do them in the chat box, because with we have 200 people registered, so just to kind of keep that under control. And then later on, we're going to try to have a conversation more like we would have in a class, so then we'll be asking you to be talking and using your video and everything.
Nat, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but could you move your mic just a little bit closer to your face or speak a little louder? It's a bit hard to hear you.
Yeah.
Much better. Thank you so much.
Better?
Sorry again to interrupt.
Yeah. These are the kinds of things that happen in online classrooms, as we've all learned. There are always these little technical things. So please keep your microphone muted unless you're talking. I'm going to make a suggestion right now that for this beginning part, we're going to be screen sharing. So either the PowerPoint or we have some other things that we might show you. And I think the best way to look at that many people don't know about is if you're on a computer using Zoom and you go up to the top, there are some view options for screen sharing, and if you put it into side-by-side mode, it will automatically size the thing that we're sharing on the left, and then it will put the picture of whoever's talking on the right. And so that, I think, is the most, I find that to be the most successful way to view something like this. The MAA has encouraged us to create programs that are accessible to different people, and we've tried to do that. But this is something that, of course, you probably want to be thinking about as you think about putting your own classes online, and we'll probably talk a little bit about some of those accessibility issues as we go on. Virgil already talked through some of the introductions. I think we already said all this. We're from the University of Northern Colorado. We've been running a synchronous online math course, math program for our master's program for a long time. And we've had online math courses, fully synchronous online math courses for 10 years, actually. So we have a fair amount of experience doing this. And so we're just hoping to share that with you. And Virgil introduced other people who are helping out. You could introduce yourselves in the chat window. There are a lot of people. And just to give you an overview of what we're going to do. So we have 2.5 hours scheduled for this webinar. That's a long time. So we're going to try to break it down into 3 parts. First, we're going to give you kind of a overview of running online classes based on our experiences and other experiences in our department and other people we've talked to and those kinds of things. Then we'll take probably a 10-minute break. And then we've broken you up into breakout rooms based on the surveys you filled out when you registered. And so we'll do a sample activity in breakout rooms so you can get a feel for what it might be like to be a student doing some active learning. And then we'll take another 10-minute break after that, and then we will move to questions and discussion. Okay. So the first part, the overview of running online classes. So we know that different people are planning to run different kinds of classes. All of our classes pretty much have been synchronous. And we think that synchronous classes are
in this master's program.
In the master's program. Prior to things happening during COVID, our classes were synchronous. That's one where everyone is online at the same time, interacting with the teacher, and we think of it as an online version of a classroom environment. We know that some of you are thinking about running asynchronous classes. That would be one where students don't all meet at a set time. Our experience has been that for the things that we've been trying to do, synchronous classes work much better. And then we know that a lot of you are planning for different kinds of hybrid classes. even more now maybe than in the spring. So you might have a class that's hybrid in the sense that some people are there synchronously, but other people can't be there at the same time. So they are asynchronous. You might have a hybrid class where some people are actually in a room with you and you're trying to also teach some people who are online, or all kinds of variations on those different things. So we're mostly going to be talking about synchronous online classes today. That's where the majority of our experience is, but we'll try to talk about some of these other things. Most of these platforms for doing synchronous classes offer the option of recording the meetings like we're doing today. That's one way that you can make it available to people who can't be there. Is there anything you wanted to add here, Virgil?
I would just add that we do have more instructors that are experimenting with combinations of asynchronous and synchronous in their courses, and I think that's trying to kind of capture the best of both methods is one thing I see happening.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the different ways to present materials, and I think Virgil, I'll let you take this part.
Okay. So a lot of what we're doing again is trying to recreate that interaction between students in their classes. And so one of the big considerations is how do we have students share their work with each other as they're working in their class. So these are just a list of a few of the things that either we've had people use or we've experimented with to try to see if they would capture what we want. So there's a few online whiteboard applications out there. There's one called what is it? I forget. And there's a few online whiteboard applications out there. There's one that I really like, except that it comes with audio. And so if you are trying to use it together with Zoom, you're going to have some problems that come up with students. And so it's one that you want to play with these ahead of time and kind of make sure you understand to what extent audio is being included as part of the app. What we do a lot of in our classes, particularly my classes and the ones that Nat teaches, is we use shared documents like from the Google ecosystem or Office 365. We use one of those to have students working in their breakout rooms together in their small group. But that lets you as an instructor kind of watch what they're doing even without being in the room. One of the big problems you'll see with the breakout rooms is as an instructor, when you come into it, there's a ding that goes off, and it's very disruptive for you to come into the room, and you can break up the flow of conversation. So by having a shared document that people are working on are working on as they work in their breakout room, you can be observing what they're doing without actually being in the room with them. And I've found that's a really powerful way to kind of keep track of what each of the different teams are up to and identify which teams that I need to intervene with as they're going. If you're for Google Docs, it would sort of be like each team would have their own document that they would be sharing and collaborating on. And then you would need to kind of have them share each of them with you. Ways to set this up efficiently, I found, are to have shared drives that the students are using, because in Google, shared drives inherit the permissions. Documents in shared drives inherit the permissions of the folders.
I know that also sometimes people set up documents with multiple tabs and have each group working on a different tab, so they can easily click through to the different groups.
Yeah, so I really like Google Jamboards is what I actually used this summer. It was my first time using it, and I really liked it because it captured that sort of behavior. That there was one Jamboard that the entire class was using, and then each each team had their own page they were working on, and it gave us a way to very quickly kind of check through what everyone was up to. And it also lets me set up the check-in when they come out of their breakout rooms. I've already gone through the document and decided what order I'm going to ask the teams to present. So I've already put some thought into what order in terms of them talking about what they've done is going to best get the class to where it needs to go, and kind of tell the story the way that that's most helpful. We have a lot of instructors that use document cameras. Oh, Nat, do you have yours hooked up, or do you want me to try to show mine?
What I show you is I have a variation to show.
Okay. Document cameras are nice because they kind of are a low entry. They'll capture handwriting really easily. The instructors that are using them typically use pens and have different colors and things like that. So it's a really nice way to kind of get nice looking stuff entered. It's more from the point of view of the instructor, so it's not so useful for students to share their work because it's a bit much to have the students in your class have their own document cameras. Let's see if Nat can get this.
Oh, you want me to share?
Yeah, did you want to, or did you want me to?
Well, so I don't have a dock camera, but I have a makeshift dock camera that I was going to share.
Okay, well, I have my actual IPvo here.
So why don't you share yours?
Whoop. There we go. And there it is, so it's got into focus. And again, you can have different colors. It's just a nice way to kind of be presenting our mathematics. I tend not to like it for two reasons, or I don't use it that much for two reasons. One is that my handwriting is pretty awful, as you can see. And then the other one is that it doesn't solve the student-student interaction as much. But we do have, I'd say around 30% of the professors in our program use a document camera in their teaching.
So let me show you what I have. This is a, let me get this to work.
And then I see a note about demonstrating Jamboard, so I'll do that after Nat's shared this.
Of course, it's not working right now. Okay, why don't you show your thing and I'll try to get this working.
Okay. So I'm going to show you an actual live Jamboard. This came from, this was one of my classes. So let me share it with you. There's no actual grading or anything like that. So I think we'll call it okay. So what you can see is we have these different slides that I can navigate at the top. We have a prompt that the students were working from, and then they were sketching out their work as they tried to think about the problem. So this was a question dealing with showing that open intervals satisfy the definition of open sets. The way I had it actually set up is the number of their breakout room, mod 3, was the slide in the Jamboard that they should be using. Yeah, so someone just asked about the share button. So absolutely, I could click on that and then share the link with you all. But then you'd be able to edit this document, and that's not necessarily what I want. So let me go ahead and create a new Jamboard and see if we could do that. Okay, so there is a new Jamboard, and indeed, with the share button, That can go in the chat. And now everyone would be able to jump into that Jamboard and manipulate it. A few of the problems with Jamboards that I've become aware of is if people are not using Chrome, images won't necessarily show up in what they're seeing. But in our class, I actually didn't have any complaints from our students. I don't know exactly how it was all working. Quite a few of them were using tablets with a stylus to do the writing and share their work. But you can also type in the screen using, there's these sticky notes that you can use. Yeah, and you can see everyone doing their work there. And then you can just, if you just click on those arrows, you'll open up a new slide, and that's now a new place where you can start collaborating. I think with a class that's too big, you would want to make sure that you have the structure set up ahead of time so they know what board they're supposed to be working on. And that was really one of the nice things with my class is we had about 3 to 5 breakout rooms at a time. And so they knew their breakout room number was identifying what slide they should be working on in the Jamboard. Okay, Nat, I think I'll stop sharing that.
Let me see if I can get this to work now.
I used, when I taught a modeling class, I used the Google Docs with Google Sheets. So the students were writing their mathematics in a Google Doc, but then they were using a Google Sheet for some of the computational parts.
Okay, so here's my doc cam, which you can see I can also write on. And this is something that I learned about in a class that somebody was doing for a crafting class. This is just, what I have is, it's just my phone in full screen mode, and it's sitting on a cooling rack being propped up by some books. And so if it's just sitting here, and oh, now it turned itself sideways, but you know, this is, you probably have these things at home. And so if you want a doc cam, and also your students probably have them, or at least they all have smartphones, or many of them have smartphones. So this could be a solution for letting people present. It works pretty well. And then nice thing is, like, if you wanted to show something you were doing with some kind of manipulative, like, you know, I've got my crocheted hyperbolic plane here, maybe I want to talk about it. I could have a bigger pile of books if I wanted to get farther away. And so if I just turn the camera here for a second, you can see it's just sitting here on right next to my camera, right next to my computer. And so that's actually a surprisingly easy way to fake your way into a doc cam. Okay, I'm going to resume the...
Oops. So someone was asking about the focus. What Nat was doing was just using his camera on his phone, and so the focus is just happening automatically with his phone.
Yeah, that's just, so if you want to use your phone, you need to find an application of which there are a whole bunch that put the phone into a full screen camera. Like if you just use the normal camera, then you get all the normal camera buttons that you don't really want. So just look around, you'll find full screen apps, and then yeah, the focusing is automatic. So this is all, well, I don't know if I can say it was low tech. I mean, first you have to have this very high tech smartphone that most of us have, but then the rest of it, as I said, it's just a cooling rack sitting on 2 books.
That's excellent, Nat. Okay, let's see, that's the makeshift. So in terms of software that we're using, we switched over to using Zoom. Nat, I want to say that happened about 5 years ago, is that?
I think it was more recent than that, maybe
Okay.
3 years ago. You know, there's been a lot of evolution in terms of these different environments for doing online classrooms. So before that, we were using Blackboard Collaborate, which I know from your responses to our questions we asked you, there are still many of you using that, and that's gotten somewhat more sophisticated also. And there are lots of other sort of competing products.
And certainly, like I'm sure is true for many of you, our administration is really big on Teams. And so there is definitely a push for us to be thinking about using Teams in our classes.
This was more of an issue, say 5 years ago when when Blackboard Collaborate was kind of way ahead of everyone else, and most of the other things weren't really very usable. Now most of the things are pretty usable, and they mostly have similar features to one another.
Yeah, for my teaching, because I want the students working with each other, and that just can't happen in a video class with 30 students. I need the breakout room feature. I need the breakout room feature or some variation on that. And so that's the thing I'm looking for in kind of whatever software we're working on. Zoom is seems to me still the best thing I've been using, but I certainly haven't used a lot of different things, and so I don't actually know if there's other options that are better. The other thing I'm noticing with Zoom is they're kind of continuing to evolve the features available in their breakout rooms, and so I like to see that that's happening. One thing I do in my classes, and I think I might be the only instructor in our program doing this, but I tend to use a chat app other than the chat that's in Zoom. I use, in my master's classes, I've used Slack, and then, so Slack is sort of like a chat app. It has a little bit, some of the features that Facebook has. People can post pictures, they can share links to files. It has integration with Google Docs. So if a student shares with me a Google Doc in Slack, and then I make a change to it or make a comment on it, I get a message from Slack when the student has responded to that comment. So if they reply to the comment or if they fix something in the document, I get a little message from the Slack app that they've done that. And so it has the effect of speeding up some of the back and forth I do with students as they're evolving their thinking about a problem. Discord is on this list because I actually asked my undergraduate students this spring what they wanted to use as we were closing campus in March. And they unanimously said that they all use Discord, and that's what they would appreciate it if I would use because they were already familiar with it. And so I kind of put it on the list because for whatever reason, it showed up as what my students are used to using. It does have some nice features. It actually has video and audio conversation included within it. So the students can use it to just set up video conversations with each other. And it's set up as these separate servers. So you set up a server for your course, and you can actually moderate that. So you can kick people off it, or you can take down posts and things like that if you need to. So those are two tools that I've used, and certainly there's other tools. I see some advantages to having a chat app that's not part of Zoom, because one of the things we have to deal with is people getting disconnected from our course as we're trying to deliver it. So we're doing this synchronous teaching, but life happens. Actually, when Nat and I did this webinar in, I want to say it was March, Nat had a blizzard in Boulder where he lives. And so he got disconnected partway through the webinar because the power went out at his location. If we're using a separate chat app like Slack, that's something that's on the student's phone, and that gives them the ability to kind of message me and let me know, hey, I've been disconnected, I'm trying to get back in, or otherwise just kind of communicate with me. Let's see, then we're listing Camtasia and the Open Broadcast software. These are two softwares that I've used for doing recordings. Camtasia is really is actually a very high-end software for making screencastings and recordings. It lets you add a lot of additional features. It lets you add fades and things like that. And basically you could spend more time than you probably should on doing production of your videos for your class. These are two softwares I would be looking into if I was thinking of doing a lot of asynchronous content for my course. If I really wanted to have a lot of videos for my students to be watching, these are the two softwares I would think about using.
We're getting a bunch of questions, so let me...
Sure, let's go through some of the questions.
Feed you some of them. One is Camtasia free.
And by the way, the HOA just started mowing, and so I'm going to have some background noise here.
Okay, so one person is asking about, is Camtasia free?
Camtasia is not free, although your campus may have some sort of license for it already. It's used enough in kind of the media classes that are taught on your campus, and it's used enough in online teaching that there's a good chance there's some sort of license on your campus already for it. So I would check with IT before you purchase it. It is also a weird software in that the Mac version of it is cheaper than the PC version, which is sort of an exceptional thing. I think it's a little bit over $100 right now for an individual license.
Okay, and there was another question about how many people could use Jamboard at one time.
Oh, I never hit a limit, so I don't know. That's a great question.
It seems like we maybe hit the limit with this giant class we have right here, but
yeah. So this Zoom class is at 200. That is the limit for Zoom if you want to pre-assign breakout rooms. And then I think the MAA was telling us that their license could go up to 300. So if you're looking at a multi-hundred student class, you're going to want to check with your IT department about the software you're using. The open broadcast service, open broadcast software is free, by the way.
There was somebody who was asking how I connected the phone to Zoom, and it's really easy. When you press the application share button, one of the options you get is to share a phone. You can either do it plugged in, or in this case, we're just on the same wireless network, and then I use screen mirroring on the phone to turn it on. So I think if you just play with that a little bit, you'll figure that out. It's not hard.
Yeah. There's some suggestions in the chat for alternatives to Camtasia. Certainly Panopto has all the features that Camtasia has, as far as I've been able to tell. And then also the Screencast-O-Matic. We have an instructor for our college algebra course that uses that for the videos that she makes for her class. So I can definitely recommend both of those.
And then there was an ongoing discussion about LaTeX. And I just wanted to, I guess we probably should have said when we talked about the online whiteboard applications is, of course, there's a built-in whiteboard in Zoom and probably in whatever other thing you're using, if you're using something other than Zoom. And one of the things that's nice is that you can do the same annotations that you do on the whiteboard, you can do on any document that you share. So one thing that means is that you could share your, you know, if you have whatever software you use to produce LaTeX, you can share your output, and then you could type into it and have it show up on the screen, and then you could also even annotate it, and you could have students doing that as well. So if they are learning LaTeX for your course, you know, I think one of the nice things to think about if you're putting your course online is what are some of the things that you can do that might actually be better online than they were in the original classroom. And so, I mean, that might qualify as one of them. If you wanted to write proofs together in LaTeX, then then you could share it and you could annotate it with the built-in whiteboard. So that's a nice thing you could do.
We've had some questions about captioning videos, and also I would assume captioning the streaming of your class. like the meeting that we're doing now. So Zoom does have captioning available, but it's not free. It's actually a plugin for a third-party software. So your university would need to purchase that third-party software and then put it into Zoom. I know UNC has been experimenting with something. I actually haven't had an update, so I don't know where they're at in terms of that being available. Google Meets also has captioning. I think that's just the default option, and I guess someone's saying in the comments that it works pretty well in their experience. I upload my videos to YouTube, which has very good captioning on the videos, and then I can also go in and edit the captions. The only problem is that editing of the captions, that takes a lot of time. That basically means you're watching you're watching the entire video because you need to watch all of the captions. I think Panopto, I believe Angela Steele told me, our college algebra instructor, I believe she told me that Panopto also is doing captioning for her videos. So these options are out there. I do think you need to get in touch with your accessibility offices or your IT offices to kind of check on what your university already has paid for that would be available to make it work.
One other question that's coming up I see in the chat is about size of breakout rooms. We'll be talking about that more later. In general, I would say that the size of the breakout rooms, and I think Jeff already said this in the text, you just, whatever it is that works for you in person is probably the same size that's going to work in online. I would typically do groups of 3 in my classes. Now today, since we have so many of you, we put you into groups of 4 to 6 just so that we could get around to you later. But I would say 3 or 4 usually works best.
So I've definitely used the Surface Book with Zoom at my previous institution. It worked very well as a writing tablet and a way to kind of share my handwriting. My groups for the breakout rooms for my classes tend to be around 5 to 6 students each. Again, it's master's level classes. I'm not sure for an undergraduate class, I might actually go a little bit smaller, as Nat was saying. I think with a smaller group, you get more interaction, but I do think it's very much what worked well for you in person is kind of the place to start and then make an adjustment from there. You do want to put some thought into whether you want to pre-assign the groups or whether you want to use the random breakout room feature. I've taught our master's level classes both ways, and I actually can't tell which one I prefer. I sort of liked that when I was doing the random ones that each student was kind of getting to interact with each other student in the class. Whereas I also liked when I had the groups be fixed for the entire class, I liked that the teams really started to mesh well and started to really get to know each other really well. So I don't think I can give any advice other than to try it and see how it works.
Yeah, the other thing that you might do is have assigned groups that stay for a little while and then you change them. There was a question in the chat about how do you pre-assign breakout rooms. It's harder in Zoom than it is in some of the other things. So like in Blackboard Collaborate, you could just let the students put themselves into groups, for example, and then once they know what their groups are, they can just reassign them to the same spot. What you have to do in Zoom is you have to enable that option when you set up the meeting, and then there's a CSV file, which is a kind of spreadsheet file that you have to produce that is basically just 2 columns. It has the name of the room and then the email address associated with the student's email account. We're going to see how that works later on because we set it up using the email addresses that you gave us. So if those aren't the ones that are connected to Zoom, we'll see what happens.
Okay, so we had a question about the length of the video, and I actually really like the answer. I think what I've definitely found myself is when I'm watching a video, if it's more than 5 minutes, I start to do something else. But I think it's definitely worth trying different things. And I definitely don't sweat if one of my videos ends up being 10 minutes. When I'm recording a class, I just basically take the class recording, trim out the parts of it that I don't want to share, and then post that on YouTube. And that's more or less how my students can go back and review what we did in class. One thing to be aware of in Zoom, if you're the host and you're recording a class, the recording follows you. So if you go into a breakout room, that breakout room session is going to be recorded until you jump out and go to another breakout room. I played around a little bit with Twitch this spring, again, just because I had these students in my class that said that was one of the tools that they were using. I actually think YouTube is probably the better tool to be using at this point, but certainly Twitch is one that if you're putting recordings there and you're doing things on Twitch, you're invading your students' space a little bit, and there's some benefits to doing that. Okay, I think we've covered the software pretty good.
Yep.
Yes, I was teaching a preparation for industry careers class, and there were definitely a lot of gamers in it.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about active learning. That was, that's certainly a big concern for, I think, for a lot of us. It's something that a lot of you brought up in your responses when you registered. So I think that if you're somebody who likes to use active learning in your classroom, you can probably figure out ways to duplicate those things online in Zoom. It won't look exactly the same. And there's always a, 15% tax of effort and how well it works from doing it online. But what I encourage people to do is to think about what your natural teaching style is, and then how can you bring that teaching style into the online environment. So, for example, if you are somebody who likes to have student presentations, I teach a lot of classes, IBL classes, where there's a problem sequence, and I have, if I was doing them in a classroom, I'd have my students presenting their work at the board. So what I do then when I'm doing a class like that online is I still have them present. The screen sharing that we're doing, you can have if you turn it on, your students can do the screen sharing. And then so all these different ways that we have to share work, they can do as well. And what I usually do in my classes, if I'm going to have people presenting, is I tend to ask them to keep a journal in which they have written up all their problem solutions for the whole class. And so when they're starting to work on them, they're already typing things. And so one of the things that I found is that this is one of these situations where online is different, but it's not necessarily worse. And in some ways it might be better. You could have students having written up their work, and then they can share their document and talk through it. Now they might go a little bit faster than if they're trying to write it at the board, but you get all the typesetting that they've already done. If they've drawn pictures, they can easily refer to those. And then if you, as a class, you have things you want to talk about, like if you want to modify a proof, you could either ask them to modify the document as you go along, or you could just annotate it using the screen sharing kinds of things. So that's what works for me, but you can do it lots of different ways. You could have a shared whiteboard while you're talking. Like if you're having a group discussion and you'd be writing things on the board, kind of taking notes for what they're doing. You could either have a shared whiteboard that you're asking them to write on sometimes, or you could be keeping track of it for them. As I mentioned before, if you want LaTeX, then you could be sharing a LaTeX document in which you are either taking notes on what they're saying, and then changing that as you go on. One thing that I liked about Blackboard Collaborate that we've lost in the Zoom whiteboard is in Collaborate, the whiteboard, you're able to just drag a PDF or a JPEG onto the board. And so I found an app called LaTeX It that lets you just type in a single formula and then you can drag it as a PDF onto the whiteboard. So that worked well if you have that kind of, if you're using that kind of a whiteboard.
I also want to kind of piggyback on something Nat said, that I think it's important you think about what are the advantages of this format of teaching that you can make sure that you exploit. As long as you're doing it this way, you might as well think about where the advantages are. And for me, one of the big ones is that I know the students, if they're on a computer or their phone, are going to have Wolfram Alpha available. And so I typically will have activities where I've built the activity with the intention that students would use Wolfram Alpha for some part of it. And that, to me, that's just kind of a way to take advantage of the situation.
Yeah. So demonstrations. So I guess one of the ways that I typically run my in-person classroom is maybe I demonstrate something or I talk about the problem we're going to do. And then I put them in groups at tables to work together on those. And that is also a mode that works really well on Zoom, especially if you can figure out how to center the activity around something that kind of naturally lends itself to being done on the computer. So for example, we're going to be doing a modeling activity in a few minutes. And so that's something you can do in a spreadsheet program. That's a nice natural thing to do because everyone has access to spreadsheet programs already. Or if it's a geometry class, I might use GeoGebra, or there are, different things like that. So doing a demonstration and then asking people to do it in groups, again, it works very naturally in a very similar way to the way it works in a classroom, but it helps if you think about, can you find a way to center the activity around something that works well on a computer so that they still kind of have a shared manipulative in front of them on their computer screen. So for example, in the spring, when we suddenly went online in my geometry class, we were planning to do some activities with physical manipulatives, and some of them we did, but that you could just do with paper at home. But we also flipped some of them out for computer labs, and that seemed to work pretty well. Okay, and we'll see how that works in a minute.
I've definitely never done it with a group this big.
Okay, well, so here was our plan. We're going to take a 10-minute break and then come back and then put you into the breakout rooms. Okay, so we're moving on to an example activity. And the way we're going to get you the activities, I'm just going to send it as a file in the chat. So give me a second. Okay, so I just sent it in the chat. So hopefully you all got it as a PDF. It is a group activity modified from one in my modeling class. So what we decided with the breakout rooms is because the pre-assigning wasn't working for a lot of people, probably because your Zoom account is associated with a slightly different email than the one that you maybe signed up under. that wasn't working.
Or just things go wrong in this format sometimes, and we have to be flexible and adapt.
Yeah, we didn't have a way to try this with this many people. But as we've said, we have tried this in our own classes, so it does work if you have your students' emails ahead of time. But so we're going to put you into breakout rooms of about 4 to 5 people each. And we're going to ask you to work on this group activity. It's about rabbits. You might already know this problem, but you could view it from the viewpoint of a student. Try to think about what you would do as a student. Now, normally if I was doing this with my class, I would probably be very explicit about what I want them to do and what software I wanted them to use. With you guys, I haven't done that. You can play around with using different spreadsheet programs, or you can also spend some time talking just about your plans for your classes in the fall if you get bored with the activity. So we're going to spend about 25 minutes in the breakout rooms. After the 25 minutes, Grace, as the host, should be able to send you all an announcement saying that time is up, but we'll just leave you in the rooms. So we'll take a break, but if you want to keep working with people in your group or talking to them, you can. And then, so in about 35 minutes, we're going to come back. And my suggestion would be to try out all the different things you might want to be able to do with your students, like try out annotating the PDF, try annotating the spreadsheet file that you produce. If you are very comfortable with Excel and you've done it there, maybe try it in GeoGebra. GeoGebra is a great tool for online teaching, and it's free. So before if I was doing this with a class, I would probably I would share. First, we'd look at the problem together. I'd probably share. Here's a spreadsheet built in GeoGebra. And actually, one of the things you might not know about GeoGebra, if you haven't used it a lot, is it's got both a graphics view and a spreadsheet view, and they interact with one another. So you should be able to, if you decide to do this in GeoGebra, you can do things like type into boxes that you want to produce a point out of numbers in other boxes, and then have them show up on in your graphics window. So I'll just leave that as something that you could try if you're running out of other things to try. But okay, so that is the plan.
So for those of you who didn't see the file that Nat shared in the chat, I'm not exactly sure what's going wrong. I just sent a link to an Office 365 version of the file. So you should be able to click on that link and download it.
So how does this whiteboard thing work?
So back to the sharing, it shares whatever thing you pick. So when you choose the share screen button at the bottom, you'll have a bunch of different choices, including every window that you have open on your desktop, as well as just seeing a picture of the desktop itself, as well as a whiteboard.
Can you use the whiteboard without sharing it and then share it after you've written stuff on it?
I don't think so. I didn't really use this whiteboard, so I'm not sure. I don't know how to open the whiteboard if we're not sharing it, actually. So
okay.
I think it's only, let's try this. Yeah, I think it's only when you actually open it that now there's a place to write.
Can we write at the same time, like multiple, people can write?
That I did try once in the spring, and if you request remote control, I can give, like, this is my whiteboard, right? I'm the one sharing it. But if you ask, you should see something at the top that says remote control, I think, and you can request to control.
I don't see.
Oh.
Maybe you don't need to have remote control. I don't know.
Oh, I see. There is a view option on the top. Everybody, to
Here.
use view option, click that, and there's a annotate. Click that option. Something, yeah, like the green color. You can
So did you write the green?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay. So I guess you don't need to use the remote control. You just need to.
I don't know. I requested it and it says that you declined.
I just declined it because I was trying to figure out what the green was. Sorry.
Yeah, that's me.
I'm going to try approving the remote control, which I think means then you can actually move my mouse around. Stephen.
That's
yeah.
cool.
How did you?
But I don't think it's very useful. I think what Sun did was better.
Which was?
But it's still hard to write something like equation or numbers. It's hard to write it. I can like circle or pointing out, but
yeah, probably what you're gonna do is like type text.
yeah.
Like that and
oh, okay. Yeah, that's better.
Did someone say that when you go out of the breakout room and back to the main room, that this disappears though?
Yes, yeah, which I think is the problem with this. It's good for like if you really need to just draw something quickly, but if you want to save the work and discuss it, it's probably not the right way to go.
Like, can you save this and then bring it back to the main room? Like, could the students, like each breakout room, save theirs?
Well, there's a save button on my screen.
Do we? Oh.
It says whiteboard saved, show in Finder.
Oh, you're right there. In the annotate box, there's a save. Yeah.
So it looks like it saves just a picture, a PNG file of the whiteboard.
Yeah, so.
Son, you're able to do things on this whiteboard.
Yeah, I'm like playing in here.
I can't do anything. I don't know.
So like click view options on the top. It's right next to the green box.
Right.
And then do you see annotate?
Okay.
Yeah, and then the toolbox just pop up.
Okay.
And you can play whatever you want. And then there's a save option. I just realized it. This is fun.
Yeah. We are viewing that screen, which is really just his iPhone on his setup, and also simultaneously annotating his piece of paper.
Yeah, so you could think about what's the best way to do this with your students, in the context of your course, and that's going to be a little bit different, I think, for whatever your course is. If it's a graduate linear algebra course, you're going to be writing different kinds of mathematics than if it's your geometry class or if it's your pre-calc class or whatever.
And then when you have all three of those, then
yeah, you might have to do different things for different classes.
that's a stretch.
But I do think that sometimes low tech is better. So like rather than, a lot of the time it's easier to, like we all know that we've written mathematics like in emails to people, right? And you can understand it even though it's just written out as text. And that, if you're trying to have a conversation about a piece of mathematics, for a whiteboard that you're just trying to do something quickly, that often works well. But you're going to have to decide. I mean, I don't, there's not a magic solution.
Yeah.
Either they're going to have to learn how to produce math in some kind of program and share it, or they're going to have to find a technological way to write it. And you certainly can do it with a stylus. There at the beginning of our master's program, we had a grant that was supporting it, and we actually were able to buy tablets for all the students. And they really, even then they didn't use the stylus very much. So that my experience has not been that that's something that a lot of people really like.
Well, I'm excited that our campus is buying Surface Go computers for our freshmen this year. So at least I know that two 2/3 of my pre-calc class will have a will have technology
thing.
besides their cell phone. Can't swear to the other guys.
Okay, well, I'm going to stop sharing. Did you guys have other questions for me before I jump into the next room?
I don't think so.
No.
Okay, I'll let you guys keep working.
All right.
All right. Shall we do something?
Sure.
Let's work out some problems. I'll leave that more to y'all, but if you need any kind of assistance.
Oh no, Kira, I want you to do them.
Yeah, you have to participate. You're in our
I don't think
room.
you want me to do.
All right. So we are going to model the rabbit population. Can we just say it's Fibonacci numbers and be done with it?
I don't know. Are we allowed? We're supposed to make a chart and practice sharing things
and practice sharing things. So what would you like to share? What would you like to try? I try all of this stuff. So whatever you want, let's have you try what you need.
Maybe a Google sheet, because then we can both edit it.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Would we both be able to do GeoGebra or Excel? Probably not, right?
Excel, we wouldn't both be able to access at the same time. GeoGebra, I'm not sure. I am not a GeoGebra user. Are you a GeoGebra user?
Not a casual user when I need it. So maybe let's try.
Let's do a Google Sheet.
Google Sheets. Okay.
So do you want to create the sheet? And then you can share it by putting the link in the chat box. And then I can jump on it.
Okay.
I don't even have my iPad logged into the meeting. This is like new for me.
So you usually log in with both?
I do. I sometimes have 3 iPads working simultaneously with my computer.
Yeah.
Wow. I only have 2 of them here in this room.
I had to save it before I could share it. All right, I just put the link in the chat.
Okay, I just received the link.
Oh, only people added can open with this link. Hold on. Let me change it to anyone with the link. I might have to resend it. I don't know if it made a new link because of that. Is that the same? Looks like it.
Okay, I actually am on the document.
Okay.
Is anybody, I can't, there are 2 of us.
There's an anonymous tiger and an anonymous duck.
Really?
I think I'm on it.
Log in.
Interesting.
And since anonymous duck, I'm going to type something.
Okay.
Jenny. It didn't let me type. Oh, I'm in view only for a minute. I'm in view only.
Oh yeah, I am view only.
Right. So did you share? You need to share a link.
Can you try close out and try the second link? Because I think I had the wrong permissions.
And then if need be, you can ask the owner to be an editor. And then you would just grant us that.
Yeah, but then the owner has to go in there and change permissions.
Yes.
And I don't think that they can change permissions for anonymous people.
Oh.
Just saying.
Gotcha.
Now we have an anonymous chameleon and an anonymous duck.
It still says request edit.
Huh. Okay. Let's see. See, I don't use this very often either. So let's see.
So when you share it, do you share it so that people can edit it?
I thought I did.
See, this is what our students do in breakout rooms, is they try to figure out the technology.
Oh, there we go. Okay, updating. Done. Now try. I didn't realize the default was viewer, so.
Did you paste it back in the chat?
I didn't, but I don't think it changed.
It will. It'll change its name a little, won't it?
Yeah, I think usually it has like edit or share or view.
Oh, okay. Try the third link. Eventually we'll get there. This is why you have to practice everything before you actually do it with students, right?
There you go.
Ooh, this looks good.
Anonymous blobfish now.
Nice. Where did it
I'm logged in. It should know who I am.
I'm logged in too. Just for
Jenny. So I just wrote my name.
Yep, you're the blobfish, I think.
I'm the blobfish.
Yeah. And you're the aurochs.
I have no idea what an aurochs is. I'm gonna have to go look up aurochs and blobfish.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, from the little picture, it looks like the aurochs is some kind of deer-like or bull-like animal.
Yes, that's yeah, but I don't see the picture for the blobfish.
Oh, it looks like a blob.
It looks like a blob. So we've created a spreadsheet and we could start doing things here, right?
We could, yes.
Let's do it.
So, what could we do?
Well,
I've gotten rid of all the things we didn't need.
All right. Well, so we need a column for months and a column for number of rabbits, maybe?
Time.
Time.
We need to deal with males versus females. Do we want to do it as pairs?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to have adult rabbits.
Yeah.
Adult pairs and juvenile pairs. How quickly do you see the...
There's a little bit of a delay, but not.
So at time in, is it time in months? I'm just doing this like I know the Fibonacci problem.
It says months.
Time in months. So
it actually looks like I can't see it until you've pressed enter, maybe.
Okay. So we start at time 0.
Time 0, yeah. And do we start with an adult pair or a juvenile pair? I can't remember what it said.
Well, we have to go read the question.
Yeah.
Oh, it copied 0. If we were in Excel,
yeah, it would just
populate for us, right?
If you put in a couple, will it do it? Like if you do 0,
Oh,
1.
you think I was just going to do equals the one above plus 1?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to type in anymore. Woohoo! Okay, so I got some months. And what does the sheet say? It says
1 month for a baby to become an adult, and 1 month's gestation time between the time a pair of rabbits becomes adults and the time their first pair of offspring are born.
And then, okay,
we'll assume they start with a pair of newborn rabbits at 0 months.
So we start with a juvenile
one
pair.
Juvenile pair. Yeah.
1 juvenile pair, no adults.
Right.
1 juvenile pair, no adults.
Okay.
Okay, and then we get to the next cell by the number of adults pairs is this plus that, right?
Yeah, let me see.
And the number of juvenile, the number of babies are my new juvenile pairs is that.
Oops, I don't see anything. Is just what came. Yes, because they have that many pairs.
So if I've done it right, did that work? Okay, that can't be right now. What did I do wrong?
Oh, wait a minute. Okay, so first we have no adults and 1 juvenile. And after a month, the juveniles become adults.
The juveniles become adults.
And you have to add to what?
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, our juveniles became adults and no one reproduced, so there were no new babies. I was worried about that 0.
I think.
Which is right.
Yeah, I think the juveniles became adults. And then not till the following month do they have a pair of babies.
So
right?
that's why at 2 months we have 1 adult pair, 1 juvenile pair.
Yes.
Okay, so I think this is actually going to work.
I think so.
I think so. And then I can just copy it all the way down.
Okay.
And we have a Fibonacci number of pairs. Perfect.
So at month 25, there are 75,025 adult pairs and 46,368 juvenile pairs.
Yeah, what are we supposed to answer?
I don't know. Let's look back at the sheet.
Okay, we did great. Great job.
We made a chart.
Oh, we need to make a chart?
No, well, let's see, wait a minute. Label. Okay. 1 column should label the number of months. We have that. Another column should show the number of pairs of rabbits alive at that time. So we need a sum column.
Okay, you go ahead and put a sum column in.
All right. Oops.
Ooh, oh, we could have controlled screens. We hadn't done that yet.
Oh.
I'm just seeing what we were supposed to be trying. So, oh, shoot. I need to share my screen. I have like too many things in big mode. I want to see like both things simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
Where's my, where's everything? There we go. Okay, we have all alive pairs. Sweet.
Right, I did that correctly. I just added the 2.
Perfect. And then we need to make a chart. I don't actually know how to graph in this one.
Not sure I do either. Insert chart?
Yeah, I guess insert chart.
Okay. Chart type. Do we want a column chart, a line? Let's see. A line, an area, a column, a bar, a pie, a scatter, a map, or other?
I would do line chart.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to try and match a function to it.
Yeah. Okay. So for the x-axis, let's see, data range. I haven't used this before, so let's see.
Okay, so what I'm going to request is I'd love it if you would share your screen with us so we can see what you're doing.
Let's see, I would like to share this.
Perfect.
Okay. All right, so we're on, well, so I guess you couldn't see all the, here were all our options.
Mm-hmm.
I went with this one. Do we want a smooth one? If we're gonna do a curve, I don't know. We can probably switch it, would be my guess.
We can.
Okay, so then I clicked on x-axis and we're supposed to select the data range. What do we want? Months on the bottom? Months on the X?
Please.
I've never done this, so we'll see.
And then add a series.
And we want the pairs, right?
Yes. Okay.
Ooh, I don't know what happened.
I don't know.
Well, my computer, let's see. Where'd the little thing go?
I don't know.
Let's try editing the chart again. Okay.
Oh, finally a team actually working on the assignment. This is great.
Working on the assignment.
What are other people doing?
I know what group I want to be a part of.
Well, we wanted to practice sharing screens and documents we could both edit.
This is great. It looks a lot like what my modeling class was doing.
Okay.
Yeah, but you know, we picked Google Sheets so we could both work on it at the same time, but I don't work in Google Sheets.
I don't either.
I know how to do it all in Excel.
It's almost all there. It's almost all there. So I used Google Sheets over Office 365, but certainly Office 365 would be something to consider using. And
But would that only work if we both had access, or?
Yeah, you have to check ahead of time because it's going to depend on the security settings that your school set up when they set up Office 365.
Yeah, my school only allows it if you're logged in through your school email.
Yeah, but their license should include students. I think that's now the default, and so hopefully your students.
Okay. So if I was doing it with students and we have Office 365, I could have just done Excel.
Well, I would test it at the time, though.
Okay. We were also saying we should probably practice all this before we did it because it took us a long time to get the sheet.
I'm seeing I have 5 minutes left. How did the time go? I am going to jump over to the last breakout room I'm supposed to visit. So,
okay.
Do you have any questions for me before I leave?
No, we'll figure it out. We got
Okay, great. Excellent.
Thanks, Virgil. Okay. So let's pretend we have our graph. What do you think?
Well, it seems like maybe it's that let's trash that one and add this one.
Maybe you have to do the whole square's worth. So there's like the x-axis and all the series.
Edit chart.
So
data range.
Yeah, let's make the data range the whole thing.
Do everything.
Yeah, let's do that.
Wait, let's trash.
Yeah, why not? We can always put it back later.
Okay.
Okay.
And the x-axis is time and months.
Okay.
Why does it? And
then let's just hit alive pairs.
There we go.
See how good we are?
We did it.
So now I went up to view options and I'm going to annotate your screen.
Okay.
And I am just going to show you the love.
Oh, very nice. All right.
Or I'm going to say, great function. We got it graphed.
Yeah, okay.
And then what I like about this one is that you can type words, right? In addition to, so that if people don't have a mouse, or if people don't have a stylus that they can write on, then they can type words.
Okay.
Though there is something I haven't tried because I've always been the person in control. Can I request remote control? So I'm going to request from you to allow me to control the document.
Okay, I clicked approve.
Okay, so
I would like to control this computer. Oh, I guess I also, have to open my system preferences.
It says, I am controlling your screen.
Okay.
So if what can I do? Trying to see what I can do to control your screen. What are my options?
I think my security and privacy is not allowing me to actually give you access. So I think I gave you access in Zoom, but then my system preferences popped up.
And said, don't
Zoom
do
is
that.
there, but it's grayed out. So probably because I'm on my school computer.
Okay, so this is
letting me allow
out.
apps to control my computer.
Okay, so
maybe
then,
if I signed in as an administrator or something, but I don't know that that's worth doing now.
I'm going to give up control. Now you have control again.
Okay.
So that is not a feature you should try using.
Nope. I'm not sure I'd want to give my students control of my computer anyway. Is it the computer or just the single screen you're sharing?
I think it's the single screen you're sharing. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
I think it's the screen, yeah.
Yeah.
But it might be useful. So for like an event like today, when you're doing the webinar, or the one yesterday, the webinar yesterday, when the speaker kept saying, okay, go to the next slide. That maybe for that moment when they are in control of talking, they should also have control of the screen, so they can just move themselves rather than tell someone to move them. I don't know. I don't know what's easier or harder.
Yeah.
So for me to interact with the screen, I would need to...
I think I'd have to set up my permissions on...
Yeah, well, I mean...
But where we're doing a shared document, you can...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can put things in the shared document.
Right.
If we wanted to save the annotation, so you have control, excuse me, to get rid of all of the annotations. I can only get rid of my own.
Okay.
And I think you can do that under View Options, Annotate, Clear. There's a trash can.
There is, yes. There's a trash can.
And I think you, because it's your document,
I can go ahead and...
You can trash everything.
Trash the whole thing. Now, does this get automatically saved in Zoom? Is that?
It will get, if you set it up so it automatically saves it, it will.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's the download button where you can save it.
Right, I see. Yeah, the save.
And you can, the other thing, I don't know if you use this much, see the little plus sign down at the bottom, down here?
Yes.
If you click on the plus sign, you will, I think you open up another screen.
Ooh.
Oh no, is that something different?
That was something different for me. That was Explore.
Oh, that's Explore. Oh, maybe the plus sign only shows up when you're sharing a whiteboard.
Maybe.
So I will regularly, when I'm doing this, I will regularly make sure I save a particular screenshot.
Yeah.
With the save, and then I pop it into the notes from class so that we have that recorded.
All right.
Or I'll have, when students are working in breakout rooms and they use the whiteboard, I will have them take a screenshot and then drop it into the bigger Google Doc that we were using so that they can talk about it. But mostly the writing happens after they come back and we're talking about what they did.
Your videos might still be on from the breakout rooms if you don't want that.
Well, but we were going to ask people to turn on their videos for the discussion anyway.
Oh, right. Okay. Now that I got everyone to turn them off.
Okay, well, welcome back, everyone. So we have a slide of possible questions, but we're really just, I think we just want to open up the discussion to whatever you guys want to talk about. I know that different groups are having different discussions, but what we're hoping part of the discussion will be is thinking about the course design part. So if you were teaching online in the spring, fall is going to be different from the spring in the sense that now we can actually plan what we're doing rather than just sort of being thrust into it with no warning. So you might think about how does that affect what you're going to do? What parts of your personal teaching style in your face-to-face classroom are you trying to figure out how to continue online? We could talk about those kinds of things, but then just what other questions are on your mind? What concerns do you want to discuss? Suggestions that people have for other people? And we're just going to kind of throw it open for questions and discussion. I know that there's a lot that people probably want to talk about.
If I may ask a question?
Go ahead.
With the breakout rooms, do you tend to prefer to allow the students to leave when they want? Or do you want a fixed time? Or again, is it a function of the type of course that you're teaching or the size of the class?
Well, for me, I think this would probably be different for different people. For me, if I'm teaching in a regular classroom, I'm putting them in groups, and then when I see, that the groups are at a certain point, I'm picking when they're coming back, and so then I would do the same thing online. I'd kind of monitor all the groups and then pull them back into the main session.
So you tend not to give them the autonomy of solving the problem in 5 minutes instead of 10?
Well, usually my problems are hard enough that nobody solves them. They just, they get partway through.
Certainly in my advanced classes, the standing order to students is to think about the extensions of the problem. Once, if they feel like they've solved that problem, they should be thinking about the next thing that they might do. The other thing I do is my students have the list of all of the problems we're going to work on for that class ahead of time. Oh, and so they can, if their team finishes one early, they can always kind of look at the next one that we might be working on. Stacy's probably laughing because I also know they tend to, they were all high school teachers, and so they also, once they finished working on the math, they would talk about their own teaching for a bit as well.
I have a question, if I may.
Okay, go ahead.
I wonder if any of you guys use systems, learning systems like OM learning with the homework assignments. And when you mentioned that you could maybe assign have a list of all the problems ahead of time, then those who want to could in fact work ahead and then come back and ask questions. Do you guys use anything like that?
So what I did for my classes is I had a Google Drive folder set up with one folder for each day. And so what they could do is click on the folder for a particular day, and then they would have the worksheet in there, or the list of problems we would be doing on that day, along with the previous day would have the reading assignments that were related to that day, or possibly the video assignments. I ended up not doing too many video assignments, but that's also where I would put them. And so certainly that's how I was organizing it. I think there's definitely other ways to approach that and try to get them working on problems ahead of time. One advantage of my course was it was a summer course that was meeting 4 days a week. So it was pretty intense, and they were basically spending most of their time thinking about my class, or maybe thinking about Betsy's class while they were thinking about my class.
What was that, a repository again? Was that Google Docs?
I used Google Drive, and I would have a folder. I would have folders in Google Drive for them. I'm also acting like I had it all done ahead of time. I stayed about a week ahead, so my goal was to be 4 days ahead.
So I see a lot of questions coming up in the chat, which
Yeah, we're not going to get to them all, so maybe pick your favorite one, Nat.
Well, I was going to say that one that I knew was going to come up, and I know some of the groups are discussing this in the breakout rooms, questions about exams and cheating and those kinds of issues. So maybe different people can say what they're thinking. I will share that I'm designing all my courses for the fall so that none of them have in-class exams, because I just feel like I don't know really what's going on, and I feel like I can replace all my exams with projects or take-home exams or those kinds of things, and then not have to deal with trying to proctor exams, worrying about cheating, those kinds of things. But certainly, I'm sure other people have thoughts about this.
Does that mean your problems are more difficult?
Well, certainly if I gave a take-home test and I gave people a week to do it, then they would be harder problems and they would be on an in-class exam.
Oh,
certainly,
for sure.
Yeah.
Is this true for elementary introductory courses as opposed to higher level courses?
Well, I should say I'm only teaching upper level and graduate courses in the fall. But I think my choice would probably be to do that no matter what, just because of the uncertainty of what's really going on in the exams. Now, I'm sure that other people are making other choices. Like in the spring when I had a course where we had exams already scheduled, we went ahead with the exams, and I sent them a PDF, they wrote out the answers and scanned it, and I made them write an honor code, and I didn't do anything more than that. And was there cheating? Well, I don't know, probably, but that wasn't really the top thing on anybody's mind in the spring.
So there's a suggestion in the chat to look on MAA Connect for a discussion about this issue. And I think there you will find a lot of different suggestions for the different types of courses and the different issues that are coming up. I certainly feel like for my advanced classes that I typically am teaching, which often are project-based classes, I feel like I typically, even for an in-person class, am not doing a traditional exam, and it's more of a trying to get students to reflect on what they've learned in the class and present evidence that they've learned some things in the class. So for a lower level class, I think my thinking about the issue would be very different. Jeff, you've taught a bunch of our courses. I wonder if you have some thoughts about what exams look like from your point of view.
It's a little bit difficult because I taught analysis, and those questions are just, they tend to be hard, just like in general. I would say in terms of exams, I agree that you should kind of lean into the fact that they have resources and time that they can use and try and write a test that takes advantage of those things. Say, yes, you'll have open notes. Yes, you can try and use the internet. But the goal should be to write an exam that gets at, what are the students trying to take away from this experience? And it involves things like you said, which is giving them reasonably challenging problems, having projects and stuff like that. Sorry, my dog is barking. But yeah, and it's, so students, they'll have, I don't think a timed test will work great, because I think a lot of people just have identified the issues with a timed closed book test in this environment. Like, we all know what those problems are going to be. So I think the best thing is, like you all said, to kind of sidestep those issues by rethinking the way in which you're going to do assessment, and really leaning into the fact that they can use all those resources and writing a test that will take advantage of all of those things. So even in my college algebra courses, all I did was I gave them what I thought would be a take-home test, and leaned into the fact that they would have time and they would have resources, and try to force them to think really hard about reasonably complicated problems. Like they weren't necessarily mathematically hard, but they were problems that took a lot of thought to really, write up a good answer to.
Thank you, Jeff. Nat, what's our next question we should answer? Or does someone else have a question they want to ask in person?
Oh, and if I could interject, I do highly recommend what you showed me, Virgil, the Francis Sue's 7 exam questions for a pandemic. Like, I feel like if people can think about their exams from that point of view, I think it'll be really helpful to prevent people, when they think of cheating as like 2 students literally copying off of one another, it really forces the exam to be really personalized. So if they do cheat, it will be incredibly obvious, and it will be very, very difficult for them to get away with that because the exam is so personal to each student.
Other questions?
I'd like to give Nat some feedback. I just never thought of a cooling tray. I think it is actually magnificent. I tried balancing books with, it just never occurred to me.
That's not my innovation. That was something I saw in somebody was doing a crafting class.
I think it's brilliant because you have room to write and without having to construct pedestal and so on. It's wonderful. Thank you.
What is it?
It's a cooling tray for baking bread, like with the wires. And so the camera fits in between 2 of the wires, but the wires hold up the phone. And then I think, what do you put it between stacks of books, Matt?
Yeah, I just have two equally sized books standing up. But yeah, I'm sure you could invent, whatever works for you. There's a question in the chat about student interaction. How to
offline.
foster, offline. I haven't found any problems with that because the students are so much better than we are at finding ways to interact electronically offline. When I started doing this like 10 years ago, I used to just have I was usually only teaching 1 online class at a time, and so I would just leave the classroom open for the students to use as a meeting place. And at that point, that worked well. But I think now, all the students have all their own favorite ways to meet, and they can figure that out.
I think I might disagree with that. I think they do like to use the Zoom room. If you give them a centralized location for them to meet, my students, at least in all my classes, have preferred to just have a designated meeting spot, and you say, you can use this room to meet. I think they really liked that.
So the one issue with that now with Zoom in particular is that so if I can set up multiple recurring meetings, but if I go into one of them, it shuts down all the others as the host, the person with the license. And so if you had 3 classes that you were doing and you actually went into the other class, then it would shut down the other ones. So that's not ideal. Our school now has a site license for Zoom that actually includes the students so that they can set up their own Zoom meetings. And of course, you can set up free Zoom meetings. Anyone, even if you don't have a license, anyone can sign up for a Zoom account, and you get the free version, which lets you have as many people as you want, but only for 40 minutes, or you can have just up to 2 people for as long as you want.
In my classes, I am lately aiming at, as the class goes on, for more and more of the interaction to actually be happening outside of the Zoom sessions. And I actually try to reduce the number of Zoom sessions we have as the class goes on. So I'm talking here about like my undergraduate classes. So What's working for me is I have them collaborating using Google Docs. I have them use the Auto LaTeX add-on to do LaTeX in it. And then basically as the course goes on, they get into more and more involved projects. And eventually we can start having fewer meetings in person or fewer meetings synchronously and have more of the interaction happening in the Google Doc. And then me meeting with the teams in one-on-one meetings for shorter time than a whole class period. And that seems to be working okay. It will depend on the students that end up in your class. It's not, I'm not going to claim it'll work every time.
Do these students form a group and everybody in the group receives the same grade when they do this?
Well, I have a syllabus that goes into how their grade's determined. And so, yeah, a large portion of their grade will be determined by what the team comes up with. But then they'll have some projects where they have to use what the team did and then do something with it. And that's a chance for them to show that A, they understood what the team did, and B, that they can do some work on their own also.
Well, you know, so one thing I would say is that in the online world, it does help to be very intentional about what you're doing. So if you want them to be working in groups, you put them in the groups, and if it's a group assignment, you might say, okay, make sure that you have figured out ways to, contact your group members if it's going to be a group assignment that they're turning in together. Or, maybe some of the question is if you're not doing like group assignments, but then how could you foster interaction among your students just in terms of the things that would naturally happen in class? And there you might think about maybe having a sign-up sheet where they could all give their contact information or something like that. I've done that occasionally. Because I think maybe we've been answering the question from the standpoint of people who give a lot of group assignments. Maybe if you just want your students talking about their calculus assignments on their own, that might be something you really might have to try to foster kind of more explicitly.
Yeah, if I was going to teach a class like calculus this coming fall and wanted to get more interaction between the students outside of class, I'd be thinking about one of these things like Slack or Discord, something where it's going to behave like Facebook or Twitter for them, so they're kind of used to that part of the conversation and would allow them to kind of talk back and forth about it. I've tried these things in the past. Sometimes it works well. What I've tried to do is have students, in an undergraduate class, I might require students early in the course to kind of post something that might be part of their grade. In the hopes that they use the things that are useful, and in the hopes that they'll see that this is a useful thing to be using.
And there are pieces built into most of the learning management systems where they can contact each other that they may or may not know about. So that would be something you could remind them of. I see one question that's coming up in the chat that I don't have any good answers for, but the question is about, what about hybrid courses where you have half your people in a socially distant classroom and half the people online?
Yeah, our other Nate is going to be teaching our class that way this coming fall, so we can check back with him.
I really think that's going to be hard to do active things with people in the classroom, because if you want them talking to each other, they'd all have to have headsets. I will say that headsets are useful. We probably should have mentioned that in general in avoiding feedback, but they're absolutely crucial if you have two people within any distance of themselves on the same call. Then you need to have headphones. So if you were going to try to do something other than just straight lecture in that kind of hybrid environment, you would really need everyone to have headsets. And then maybe you could have them working as though they were all remote, but maybe that then you're not getting anything out of having them there. It's just making it harder because they're all wearing masks. I'm not sure. Maybe other people have good advice about that.
I've been thinking well, we're going all fully remote, so I'm not going to have this issue after all, but I was wondering if they could use their cell phones with their masks on to talk to each other.
Or call each other.
Right, call each other,
Text
within their group, or text each other or whatever within their group.
Do a group text.
Yeah.
And like it mentioned in the group chat, it doesn't have to be like full headsets. If they have earbuds with a microphone like I'm using, that works just as well. And most of them should have that.
Mm-hmm. I can't speak for all of your campuses. Our campus is going to have a lot of small spaces that are not going to be usable for classes anymore. Basically, the capacity of our classrooms went down by 60%. And so all of those 30 student classes now only fit 10 students. And so those spaces we're actually making available for students that are joining in-person classes or that are joining online synchronous classes that need a space to do it from on campus. So that might be one question to bring up on your campuses. Are there spaces that might be available for students to use if they're attending a synchronous online class, but they're on campus?
If I can add something, I personally am thinking about going old school if I'm allowed to teach in person, where I ask the students to have a slate, or otherwise known as a small personal whiteboard, so that they are still 6 feet apart and they are writing on their whiteboards and sharing from a distance. It's still a non-permanent surface, so that there's not that sense of I'm going to write something wrong and have to, cross it out. It's easy to cross out. And I put in the chat, I thought Robert Talbot has been thinking about this an awful lot, and he had some really interesting ideas for the structure of his high flex class, where he was thinking about creating learning pods so that, the one person from a team would be in the room that day, but the team is responsible and they are communicating in real time on whatever channel they are interested in. So if they are Discord or they are Slack, they are talking amongst themselves. And if you're all using different channels, maybe there's not so much feedback. And that person can represent what the group has for that day, and everybody has sort of a responsibility to the group at different times. I mean, he has a lot of really interesting ideas, and I put a link to that one particular blog post. So that's it for me.
That is a really great idea, Jen. Thanks for sharing that.
I mean, I guess one other thing that I'm thinking about this is that if you're having some of the students in person, there's no reason why you have to always actually meet with them in person when they're scheduled to. Like if you're finding that, for some particular day you want to do a group activity, and that would work as well or better if nobody was in the room, assuming that's allowed, you could do that some of the time. Because I think that group work is going to be easier through something like Zoom, breakout rooms, and just having people in the room in that situation is going to just be make it harder because everyone's going to be wearing masks and whatnot.
Just a quick note about using slates or individual blackboards. That if you're using them for multiple classes, you'd have to make sure that they were disinfected between each use.
Yeah, one thing that I've heard of other people talking about doing is people who like to have their students write up on the blackboard, that they might still do that, just making sure that they're far enough apart from one another when they're doing it. And then you just have to give everyone a whiteboard marker at the beginning of the semester and they keep it. And then, right, that's the only, right, then there's no shared surface.
And if you're teaching a class where you use a lot of manipulatives, like I'm going to be teaching pre-service elementary teachers, you have to think about how those might transmit germs as well.
Yeah, one thing I'll add, we are lucky in that we're in the same building as our biology department. And they apparently have a bunch of industrial dishwashing machines. And so we're going to be running the manipulatives for our elementary math courses through those dishwashers. I'm not sure how often, but I think at least once a day. Let's see, any other questions for our discussion?
Just a technical point that one of the groups pointed out is that if somebody, a student for instance, is joining a meeting through the browser with Zoom rather than the Zoom app, then they have limited functionality with how they can participate, and that they can't share a whiteboard or annotate anybody else's things. And if they're the one sharing their screen, then nobody else can annotate that.
Yeah, and I think that's particularly a problem if they're using a Chromebook, because I think the only option for them to join the meeting is through the browser in that case.
Again, the one thing I would say about that is, since we do have some lead time, I think being able to tell your students ahead of time, you know, you need to be, we are meeting synchronously at this time. You need to have headphones. You need to be on a computer. You could try to figure out if that is feasible with your students where you are, or at least you're strongly encouraged to be on a computer with headphones so they can sort that out.
Nate, at that point, I noticed that in this past spring, many of my students did not have a computer, but they were able to get into Zoom with their cell phone. But are you aware of any limitations on that cell phone? Obviously, they might not be able to use it as like a whiteboard or something like that. But
yeah, the annotating feature is the very first thing I think of that they're going to lose.
And then the other big problem with cell phones is just that you can't see very many people. Like, I think you can usually only just see one person at a time. Whereas if you're on a computer, you can have a gallery view, you can have the whole class, you can see everyone and kind of have a class discussion.
Catherine, did you have a question or a comment?
No, I was just trying to indicate that I think I can sometimes see up to 4.
Okay.
That being said, in my experience in a pre-cal course, I guess out of I don't know, a population of 18, maybe 2 or 3 showed up with the video, and maybe 1 or 2 others showed up, you know, with the video turned off. So I consider that fairly low, you know, response rate for a group that size. Do you have you had an experience like that?
Well, so I mean, that was kind of my, in the spring, that was my experience in one of my classes. I had 2 very different classes. I was teaching a geometry teacher for pre-service teacher course. It was a geometry course, and they had all been interacting very nicely before we went off campus, and they continued to interact very nicely on Zoom, and they were willing to talk and turn on their cameras, and I just asked them to keep their cameras on. And then I was teaching a CS course where they were all kind of taciturn in class, and they continued to be taciturn when we went online, and they all claimed that they didn't have devices that had video. Seems highly unlikely to me that it's really true that a CS class has more people that don't have devices with video than a geometry class. So, but I think that the thing that's going to be different in the fall is that you can make the expectation clear from the beginning. I really felt in the spring like we had to be like, you know, super accepting of whatever it was that was going on, because we just didn't know somebody suddenly had to leave campus with none of their belongings or whatever. And now I think it's reasonable to expect people to have video and to say, you know, even before the class starts, this class is going to be meeting synchronously. We're going to have video. You have to have the video on. If for some reason that's not something you can do, then come talk to me personally or send me an email and explain your circumstances, and I'll make an exception. But the expectation is going to be that, yeah, everyone's going to be kind of interacting. And I think if you start that way from the beginning, then it's going to, you know, that carries through. And certainly what we found in our online classes in the master's program is that we never have those problems. You know, it's just, it's part of their expectation.
Yeah, I think in my 2 years being chair here, I think we've had one student in the master's program that told us they were having trouble getting the right equipment.
And obviously the master's students are a little bit more with it than undergraduates would be. But I think particularly if, you know, like the campus is open and there are computers on campus. I mean, that was the other thing that happened, right, in the spring was everyone got thrown off campus, so they were maybe expecting to use computers on campus and then they lost access to them. If you're in a campus where people are back, then maybe they could use those. And our campus was also loaning out laptops to people. So maybe
I do want to point out one thing though, is my first advice to someone who's having internet problems with Zoom is to either downgrade the quality of video that they're sending or turn off their video entirely. And so one reason students in some of my classes might not have their video on is that I've told them, hey, if your internet is causing you a connection problem, the first thing to try to get it fixed is to turn off your own video. And in fact, I have to turn mine off or downgrade mine myself. I live in a townhome with 65 other units around me, and if everyone's watching streaming video at the same time I'm trying to do class, we're going to have some problems. So for instance, that's lower quality video.
So do you have any example of a syllabus? Like we have this regular face-to-face syllabus where we have never included all parts. So now that you have this online syllabus, do you have these extra precautions? What are the instrument, which type of instrument, or exam, different ways of things? Do you have any example of a syllabus which we can share, you can share, and we can have a look into that?
So yeah, certainly.
Office hours and everything.
If someone wants to send us an email, we can certainly share copies of our syllabi with you. I would say for the master's program, I definitely have a statement in mind about what software we're planning to use and what hardware they're going to need. Nat, I believe that's basically in everyone's syllabi for this program, right?
Yeah, certainly. I've always had a section in my syllabus that said what technology I was expecting people to have. And I just have always like listed headphones, for example, as just one of the just like we'd have a required text. I say, you know, here's the required technology. You have to have a headset of some kind, and you have to have a computer that, you know, will let you participate, and so on and so forth. And if I was doing something, you know, whatever I was going to do with exams, I would certainly list in the syllabus.
But that's for an online program, right? I mean, we're talking about students who signed up for a face-to-face program that's going to be something different.
Yes.
And is it reasonable to expect them to have computer equipment as well?
Well, I don't know. It might depend on what your campus is doing. Like, so in our campus, it's true that they signed up for courses in the spring and they didn't know necessarily what those are going to be. But over the summer, it's been announced which courses are online, which ones are online synchronous, which ones are online asynchronous. So I feel like it is reasonable in that situation to treat it as though, you know, they've had a month and a half warning that this is going to be an online course, and they could change.
We have the tech survey that our IT department does is showing us at more than 99% of our students have a device. our library is going to be loaning out laptops. They have an incredible number of laptops. It's actually sort of amazing how many they've managed to amass. And then there are, like I said, there are spaces on campus that are being made available. I realize these things aren't the same on every campus, and this is definitely a hard question for this fall. I'm working with a school in Alberta that has, you know, really tough internet connection issues for their students.
Again, you could start out by saying, okay, this is kind of the baseline of what I'm expecting for the kind of interaction I want out of you in this class. And if there are technical reasons why, you know, it's going to be a problem for someone in particular, let me know and we'll work it out.
I feel like we're almost out of time, Matt, is that?
Yeah, I think we're out of time pretty much.
I want to make sure we take a moment to thank Stacy. Wave your hand, Stacy. Thank you. Betsy and Jeff. Oh, there's Jeff. Okay. Thank you to the three of them for joining us. That was a big help. It really helped the breakout rooms go smoother, I hope.
Before we stop, I should mention that
oh, right.
we had talked about maybe having some follow-up meetings if people are interested as you're starting to teach, if people want to just have a forum to talk to other people about how online teaching is going for you in the fall. So we'll probably do those as like maybe happy hours on Friday afternoons or something. We'll probably try to be in contact with people who are interested to pick a time. The MAA is going to send out a follow-up survey to you all asking about the webinar.
The survey is in the chat actually right now.
So you could indicate there that you're interested in follow-up meetings, and we will find a way to make that happen.
Great. Thank you to everyone for joining us. This has been a really nice discussion, and I appreciate seeing everyone here.
And good luck in the fall.
Yeah, absolutely. Good luck in the fall. Stay safe.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all. Bye.
Bye, thanks. And feel free to email us if you have any further questions.